The doctor looked at the chart twice, then he looked at me. Then he looked at the chart again, the way a man does when the numbers in front of him refuse to match the woman sitting across from him. He had read everything before I walked in. He knew my age. He knew my history. What he could not understand was the rest of it. The blood pressure he kept measuring a second time because he was sure the cuff was malfunctioning, the cholesterol, the bone density, the sharpness of mind that let me repeat every word he had said an hour later in the parking lot. He asked me, with the careful tone doctors use when they are about to question your honesty, what I had been eating. I told him. He waited for me to continue. I did not continue. There was nothing else to add. My name is Evelyn Grace. I am 92 years old. I have lived in the same house for 44 years, and for the last 11 of those years, I have lived in it alone. My husband Harold died at 84. We were married for 52 years, and for reasons that took me a long time to understand, I now eat the same 3 things every day: oatmeal in the morning, a boiled egg with a slice of buttered bread at midday, an apple in the evening. That is all. That is everything. If you are watching this, I imagine you are not 92. I imagine someone in your life eats in a way that worries you, or you eat in a way that worries them. I imagine you have been told, by people who mean well and by people who sell things, that food is complicated, that nutrition is a science, that you must measure and weigh and supplement and rotate and balance, that the body is a machine that breaks down without the right combinations of fuel. I have heard all of this. My children have said all of this to me, in different tones, at different volumes, across a great many years, and I want to tell you gently that almost none of it is true. The doctor was kind. He did not lecture me. He did what good doctors do, which is to sit there with what he was seeing and let it be what it was. He said he could not, in good conscience, recommend my diet to anyone. He also said he could not, in good conscience, ask me to change it. Then he laughed, just a little, and told me to come back in a year. I told him I would if I was still here. He said he had no doubt that I would be. I drove myself home. I made a boiled egg. I sat at the table where Harold used to sit across from me, and I ate it slowly, the way I have eaten every meal for the last 11 years. Catherine, my oldest, found out about the doctor's visit before I had even taken my coat off. I do not know how she always knows. I suspect Robert tells her, because Robert calls the doctor's office sometimes to ask questions he is too polite to ask me directly. By that evening, Catherine had driven over with 2 paper bags full of groceries, chicken breasts, broccoli, those little plastic containers of yogurt with the fruit on the bottom, a bag of almonds, frozen salmon, something called quinoa that I am told is good for me. She put it all in my refrigerator without asking, and then sat at my kitchen table and cried. She did not cry because of what the doctor said. She cried because of what he did not say. She had wanted him to scold me. She had wanted a list of new rules she could enforce when she visited on Sundays. She had wanted an authority above her own that she could point to. Instead, she got a man who shrugged at her mother's blood work and told her mother to come back in a year. And it broke something in her, just for a moment, because she has spent the last 11 years trying to protect me from something I keep refusing to be afraid of. I let her cry. I made her tea. I sat with her. I did not eat the chicken. I did not eat the broccoli. I did not eat the quinoa. The salmon went into the freezer and stayed there until she came back 2 weeks later and threw it out herself. The yogurts I gave to Diana, who eats yogurt the way some people drink wine, with great seriousness and a small spoon. The almonds I keep in a glass jar on the counter where they look pretty and where I do not eat them. I am not telling you this to be difficult. I am telling you this because somewhere along the way, I learned something that I think nobody told me until I was nearly 80, and I think it is the only thing worth knowing about food. and I think very few people will say it out loud. Your body, if you have lived in it long enough and listened to it carefully enough, knows what it needs, not what it wants, what it needs. Those are not the same thing, and learning the difference is the work of half a lifetime. When Harold was alive, I cooked. I cooked the way women of my generation cooked, which is to say constantly, elaborately, and with a particular pride in the variety we could put on a table. Monday was roast chicken, Tuesday was meatloaf, Wednesday was fish, Thursday was something with noodles, Friday was whatever Harold wanted, which was usually a steak and a baked potato and a small salad he would eat the way a man eats salad when he is doing it as a favor to his wife. Saturday was for the children when they came, and later for the grandchildren when they came, and there were always pies, and there was always bread I baked myself, and there was always a second helping for whoever wanted one and a third for Robert, who could eat a great deal when he was younger. I do not remember most of those meals. I want to be honest with you about that. 52 years of cooking, 3 meals a day, and what I remember is maybe 20 meals. The Thanksgiving. Harold burned his hand on the oven door. The Christmas Diana announced she was vegetarian, and Catherine told her she was being dramatic, and they did not speak for the rest of the afternoon. The morning I made pancakes for Sophie when she was 4, and she told me with great seriousness that they were the best pancakes in the world, and she would marry me when she grew up. A few birthdays, a few anniversaries. The rest is gone. 52 years of feeding the people I loved, and the meals themselves have faded into something more like weather, present, daily, gone. What I remember is Harold's face across the table. What I remember is the way he held his coffee cup in both hands when the kitchen was cold in winter. What I remember is the sound of the newspaper when he turned the page. The food was only ever a vehicle for that, a reason to sit down, a reason to stay. When he died, I stopped cooking. I want to be clear about what I mean. I did not stop eating. I stopped cooking. There is a difference, and I think it is the difference that nobody talks about. The first month after Harold died, I could not stand in the kitchen. I do not mean emotionally, although that was also true. I mean physically. I would walk in to make myself something and find that I could not lift the pan, or could not remember why I had come in, or would open the refrigerator and stand there for 10 minutes, looking at food that had been bought for 2 people and now had to feed one. Diana came over and cooked for me for 3 weeks. Catherine came on the weekends and froze meals in plastic containers with little labels. Robert sent me a meal delivery service from California that arrived in a styrofoam box with ice packs that hissed when I opened them. I ate almost none of it. I want you to know that. I ate almost none of it, and not because the food was bad. The food was excellent. I ate almost none of it because food, when you have just lost the person you ate with for 52 years, becomes an obscenity. It sits there on the plate and reminds you that your body is still going, that your body is going to keep going, that your body does not know yet that the most important part of your life has ended, and food is the proof that your body intends to keep being a body whether you want it to or not. There is a kind of grief that makes you angry at your own appetite. I lost 14 pounds in the first 6 weeks after Harold died. Catherine noticed and panicked. Robert noticed and sent more food. Diana noticed and cried. None of them understood that I was not refusing to eat. I was refusing to participate in the lie that life was continuing. The food was the lie. The kitchen was the lie. The plates and the napkins and the chair across from me that no one sat in were the lie. I was not on a hunger strike. I was simply not ready to admit that breakfast was still a thing that existed in a world that no longer contained Harold. What pulled me back was something very small. I want to tell you about it because it is the thing that started everything. About 2 months in, on a morning when the light came through the kitchen window, the way it had always come through the kitchen window, I opened the cupboard and I saw the canister of oats. Harold's oats. He had eaten them every morning of our marriage. Plain, with a little salt, the way his mother had made them on a farm in Vermont before the war. I had teased him about it for 52 years. I had offered him fruit and brown sugar and milk and cinnamon, and he had always said no, thank you, just the oats, just the salt. He liked them dense and sticky and a little chewy. I had thought it was a personality defect. I had thought it was a stubbornness left over from his childhood. I made the oats that morning. I do not know why. I made them his way with a little salt and nothing else, and I sat down at the table and I ate them, and they tasted like him. They tasted like 52 years of mornings I had not paid attention to. They tasted like the man who had sat in that chair and read the paper and said almost nothing and loved me in a way so quiet I had sometimes forgotten to notice. I cried into the oats. The salt got saltier. I ate them anyway. I had oatmeal every morning after that. At first because I could not bear the thought of any other food, and then because I could not bear the thought of changing. Then slowly, because I noticed that I felt good. I had not felt good in years, not bad. Harold and I had been healthy, the way people from our generation were healthy, which was mostly by accident and a great deal of walking. But I had not felt good in the way I started to feel after a few weeks of just oatmeal in the mornings, lighter, clearer, less heavy in the body, less foggy in the head. I did not connect it to the food at first. I thought it was grief-lifting, which it was, partly, but it was also the absence of all the other things I had been eating, the buttered toast and the bacon and the eggs and the coffee with cream and the second cup with sugar. I had not realized how much I had been eating until I stopped, and I had not stopped on purpose. I had stopped because Harold had died, and I no longer had the heart to make a full breakfast for one person. The egg came next. The egg came because Diana was visiting in the 3rd month, and she made me an egg one afternoon when she realized I had not eaten lunch in several days. She boiled it. She put it on a small plate with a slice of bread and butter and a little salt. She sat next to me, not across from me, and she watched me eat it. She did not say anything. She did not ask anything. She just sat there, and when I had finished, she took the plate and washed it and left it on the rack to dry. That was the kindest meal anyone has ever made for me. I started making the egg myself the next day. I have made it almost every day since. 11 years, more or less, of a boiled egg and a slice of buttered bread at midday. It is enough. It has always been enough. I do not know why we have all been told that we need more. The apple came last. The apple came from Rose, who is my youngest grandchild, and who was 3 years old when she handed me an apple at a family gathering, and told me in the very serious way that 3-year-olds say important things, that she had picked it out for me because it was the best one. It had a bruise on it. It was not the best one. It was the one she could reach. I took it home that night, and I ate it before bed, sitting at the kitchen table in the dark, and I thought about how a small child had given me a piece of food without any agenda, without any worry, without any nutritional information, and how that was the first time in 3 years that food had felt like a gift instead of an obligation. Rose is 8 now. She still picks apples for me when she visits. I still eat them. I have eaten an apple before bed almost every night for the last 5 years. That is the whole story. That is how I came to eat the same 3 things every day. There was no plan. There was no doctor. There was no book. There was a woman who lost her husband, and in the slow work of learning how to be a person again, she discovered that her body had been asking her for a very long time to please stop giving it so much. Catherine cannot accept this. Catherine is 68 years old, and Catherine has spent her entire adult life being told that nutrition is complicated. She has read the books, she has watched the documentaries, she has subscribed to the newsletters, She has rearranged her own pantry 17 times in the last decade, according to whichever expert was currently making sense. She has eliminated gluten. She has eliminated dairy. She has reintroduced gluten. She has gone vegan. She has gone keto. She has done intermittent fasting. She has done the Mediterranean diet, the Nordic diet, the anti-inflammatory diet, the diet where you eat according to your blood type, which I told her sounded like something out of a magazine, and she informed me, somewhat tearfully, that it was indeed something out of a magazine, but that did not make it wrong. I love Catherine. I want to be clear about that. I love her with the particular fierceness you feel for a firstborn who came into the world already worried. But Catherine cannot stand the idea that her mother eats 3 things, and Catherine cannot stand it for reasons that have very little to do with me and a great deal to do with her. If I am fine on 3 foods, then everything she has done is more complicated than it needed to be. If I am thriving on what she considers an insufficient diet, then the years of optimization and substitution and worry have not been protecting her. They have only been giving her something to do. And the thought that all of that effort might have been unnecessary is, for Catherine, more frightening than the thought that her mother might be malnourished. So we have the same conversation every few months in slightly different forms, and I let her have it because I understand that what she is really asking me is whether she is going to be okay when I am gone, and the food is just a way of asking it. Robert is different. Robert lives in California, and Robert is an engineer, like his father was, and Robert approaches my eating habits the way one might approach a malfunctioning piece of equipment. He sends me articles. He has sent me, over the years, perhaps 40 articles about protein intake in the elderly, about the importance of variety in the gut microbiome, about the dangers of nutritional deficiency in women over 80. He sends them with little notes that say things like, "Mom just wanted you to see this," or "Mom, the part about the B12 is what I was talking about." He does not call to discuss them. He sends them and then waits, the way an engineer waits for a system to respond to a corrected input. I read them. I want him to know that I read them. I read them, and I consider them, and I notice that almost all of them are written by people younger than my children, and that the studies cited in them are almost always conducted on people in nursing homes who do not have the option of cooking for themselves, and that the conclusions drawn from those studies do not necessarily apply to a 92-year-old woman who walks 2 miles a day and feels fine. I write Robert back. I tell him I appreciate the article. I tell him I am taking it under consideration. I do not change anything. Robert is starting to understand. I think the change came about a year ago, when he visited and watched me move through my day. He had not visited in 18 months, because California is far, and because his work is demanding, and because we have all become a culture that visits its parents less than it should. He sat in my kitchen and watched me make my egg. He watched me eat my apple. He watched me wash the same 2 dishes I wash every day. And on the morning he left, he hugged me longer than usual, and he said very quietly, "You're doing better than I am, Mom." That was all. He has not sent an article since. Diana is the one I worry about. Diana is 61, and Diana is what we used to call sensitive, and what people now call something more clinical that I refuse to learn. Diana feels everything. Diana feels the way some people sweat, constantly, visibly, without effort. She calls me twice a week. She tells me what she has been reading, what she has been watching, what she has been worrying about. The worrying is mostly about me. Some of it is about her own children. Almost none of it is about herself, which is a problem, but it is not a problem I can solve from here. Diana does not understand my food. Diana understands that I am alone, and that food is for her a way of being with other people. She cannot imagine eating an apple by yourself in a dark kitchen and feeling content. She cannot imagine that a boiled egg, eaten at noon at a table where no one else is sitting, could be enough. She thinks I am hiding. She thinks I am punishing myself. She thinks I am still grieving Harold, which I am, of course, but not in the way she means. I have tried to explain it to her. I have told her that what I eat is not a symptom of loneliness, but a result of clarity. I have told her that I have made peace with eating alone, that I have made peace with food being small, that the ritual of 3 simple things is not a deprivation, but a freedom. She nods. She agrees. She comes over the next weekend with a casserole. I eat a small portion to be polite, and I freeze the rest, and 3 weeks later I throw it out, and we begin the cycle again. I do not blame her. I am her mother, and she is trying to feed her mother, and that is a very old and very deep instinct, and I will not shame her for it. But I do think sometimes that the people who love us the most are the people who most need us to stay the same. And when we change, when we simplify, when we let go of the things we no longer need, the people who love us experience it as a kind of leaving, as if we are leaving them by not needing what they want to give us. I have learned to receive the casseroles. I have not learned to want them. Sophie, my oldest granddaughter, is 25, and Sophie asked me about my eating last summer in a way no one else has ever asked. She was sitting on my porch. She had come over because she had broken up with someone and did not want to be in her apartment. She had brought me a coffee from the place she likes. She asked me, without any worry in her voice, what I ate. Not what was I eating that day, not what was I going to eat for dinner. What did I eat in general as a way of life? I told her. She listened. When I was done, she sat there for a while, and then she said, "Grandma, that's the most peaceful thing I've ever heard." I think she meant it. I think she meant it the way the young sometimes mean things that the rest of us have stopped being able to say out loud. She is 25, and she lives in a city, and she has 6 different applications on her phone that deliver food to her door, and she eats at her desk while she works, and she does not remember the last time she sat at a table with no screen on it. She told me that. She told me she sometimes orders a meal and then forgets to eat it because she is too busy. She told me she had not boiled an egg since college. She told me she had not eaten an apple, a whole apple, with a peel, in several years. I made her a boiled egg that morning. I made her oatmeal the next morning. She stayed 3 days. She ate what I ate, and she said almost nothing about it, and on the 3rd morning, before she drove back to the city, she hugged me at the door, and she said, "I feel like a person again." I do not know what she meant by that. I think she did not entirely know either. But I think what she meant was that food had become small again, and small was the right size. James is my oldest grandson, 23, and James is the one who has started asking me questions about Harold. He never knew his grandfather very well. He was 12 when Harold died, and he remembers him only as the quiet old man who lived in my house and read the paper. James sits at my kitchen table sometimes on Sunday afternoons when he is not working, and he asks me what Harold was like, what he laughed at, what he was afraid of, what he believed. I tell him about the man who ate oatmeal with salt for 52 years and never asked for variety, and about how I used to think that was a flaw, and now think it was a quiet kind of wisdom I did not have the eyes to see. I tell him that Harold understood something about food that I did not understand until he was already gone. That food can be ritual, not entertainment. That eating the same thing on purpose is not poverty, but devotion. That sitting in the same chair every morning and eating the same bowl is one of the ways a man tells his life that he intends to keep showing up for it. James does not eat oatmeal yet. But he eats the same lunch every day, he told me, and he had been ashamed of it before because his friends made jokes, and now he is not ashamed of it. He said this to me with a kind of relief I recognized, the relief of a young person who has just been given permission to be slightly boring in the right way. That is the thing nobody tells you, the thing I want to tell you if you are watching this. We have made eating into a performance. We have made it into a hobby, a politics, an identity, a constant low-grade anxiety. We carry around the idea that every meal is a small decision with consequences, that we are either succeeding or failing at nutrition, that there is some optimal version of our diet that we have not yet achieved, and that we must keep trying to achieve. And it is exhausting. It is exhausting in a way that we do not even notice anymore, because everyone we know is also exhausted by it, and we have come to believe that this exhaustion is just what it means to eat in the modern world. It is not. You can stop. I want to tell you that you can stop. Not in some dramatic way. Not by following some plan. You can simply notice one morning that you would feel better if your breakfast were the same thing it was yesterday. And you can have it. And the next morning you can have it again. And in a few weeks you will notice that you no longer think about breakfast, that the decision has stopped being a decision, and that the part of your brain that used to spend energy on the question is now free to think about something else, something better, something more worth the thinking. This is what I have come to call the secret that nobody told me. The secret is that simplicity is not a deprivation. The secret is that the constant variety we have been told is essential is, for most of us, a source of stress that we have stopped recognizing as stress. The secret is that your body, at any age but especially as you grow older, would rather have one trusted meal than 4 complicated ones, and that the trust matters more than the variety, and that your gut, if you ask it kindly, will tell you what it wants to be fed if you are willing to listen. I am not telling you to eat what I eat. I am 92. I have earned the right to my apple. You may be 35 and you may need protein, or 50 and you may need fiber, or 70 and you may need iron. I do not know your body, but I will tell you that I have spent more time listening to my body than to any expert, and that my body and I have come to an arrangement that suits us, and that the arrangement involves 3 things, and that I am still here, and that the doctor cannot quite believe it but has stopped trying to argue with it. There is something else I want to say, and it is harder to say, and I am going to try. There is a kind of fear of food that takes hold of people as they get older. It is not always about weight or health or the body. Sometimes it is about control. Food becomes one of the last things you can decide for yourself when so many other things are being decided for you. What you eat, and when, and how much, and whether you eat alone or with someone, these are the small sovereignties of an old person, and they are not small to us. They are everything. When Catherine brings me her chicken and her broccoli and her good intentions, what she is asking me, without knowing she is asking, is to give up that sovereignty. She would never put it that way. She would say she just wants me to be healthy. She would say she just worries. She would say she only wants what is best for me. And all of that is true. But underneath it is a request that I let her decide, and underneath that is a fear that if she does not start deciding now, she will not be able to decide when it really matters, when I am older, when I am sicker, when I cannot defend my own preferences. So she practices. She practices with the chicken. She practices with the broccoli. She practices with the casseroles and the yogurts and the salmon in the freezer. And I practice too. I practice saying no kindly. I practice receiving the food and not eating it. I practice keeping the kitchen mine, because the day I stop practicing is the day the kitchen stops being mine, and the day the kitchen stops being mine, is the day I stop being Evelyn Grace and start being someone Catherine takes care of, and I do not want that day to come before it has to. I love my children. I love them more than the food they bring me. But I will not eat what they bring me, and I want them to understand eventually that this is not a rejection of them. It is a refusal of a particular kind of dying, the dying that begins when you let other people start choosing your meals because they are afraid you can no longer choose them yourself. I make my own oatmeal. I boil my own egg. I pick my own apple from the bowl on the counter. These are not small things. These are the things. Rose was here last Sunday, 8 years old, with her father's quiet eyes and her mother's hands. She watched me make my egg. She watched me put it on the plate. She watched me cut my slice of bread and butter it the way I have been buttering bread for 70 years, which is starting at one corner and working out, not from the middle. She did not say anything for a long time, and then she said, "Grandma, you eat like a person who knows what she wants." I did not know what to say. I did not have an answer. I just stood there at the counter, an old woman with a small egg on a plate, and I thought, yes, that is exactly it. That is what 80 years of meals are supposed to teach you, to know what you want, to know what is enough, to stop performing nourishment and start receiving it, to sit down at the same table with the same food at the same time, and to call it a life, because that is what a life is when you finally stop running from it. I am going to keep eating my 3 things. I will eat them tomorrow and the day after, and, if I am lucky, for some number of years that I have stopped counting. When I die, it will not be because of the oatmeal. It will not be because of the egg. It will not be because of the apple. It will be because I am 92 or 93 or 95 or whatever I get to be, and because at some point every body finishes its work and lays itself down. And when that day comes, I would like the last thing I ate to have been something simple, something I chose, something I made for myself in my own kitchen. That is what I have to say. I do not know if any of it is useful. I know that nobody told me, and I wish someone had, and so I am telling you in case you are the person who needed to hear it. You do not have to make every meal into a project. You do not have to optimize. You do not have to apologize for liking what you like and eating it again. You are allowed to be a person who eats the same things. You are allowed to be a person who has decided. You are allowed to stop. The doctor will see me again next year. He told me before I left that he was going to start asking some of his other patients about their grandmothers. I did not know what he meant by that. I think he meant that he was going to start listening differently. I hope so. We could all stand to listen a little differently to the women in our lives who have already lived through what we are still afraid of. I am going to make my oatmeal in the morning, Harold's way, with salt, nothing else. I will sit in the same chair I have sat in for 44 years, in the kitchen where I raised 3 children and waited up for them and fed them and let them go. The chair across from me will be empty, the way it has been for 11 years, and I will not be lonely, because I have stopped being lonely in that particular way, and the morning light will come through the window the way it has always come through, and I will eat slowly, and I will think of him, and I will be here, and that will be enough. That has always been enough. I just did not know it.